I think what most history of art majors here at KU are interested in is they want to get into internships and want to get at least one internship before they graduate, right? But the biggest hurdle is how do I get started, right? Where can I find resources? How do I apply? What does this application process look like, right? And so I know, Cara, that you did 2 internships. So what were the resources that you used to find out about them? How did you apply for them? How did this all go?
Of course. So for both internships, I used a variety of resources to find them and to apply for them. At my undergraduate university, our Career Center maintained a website that is similar to LinkedIn, but that was specifically geared towards employing either college students or recent college graduates. So they cultivated internship opportunities, part-time and full-time opportunities from companies and institutions in the cities that were specifically looking to hire either college students as an intern or recent college graduates, which was very nice because then you didn't have to compete with people who had 20 or 30 years of experience on you. So that was one resource I used quite heavily. The other resource that I used a lot was just scrolling through the career opportunities pages of the institutions I knew I was interested in. So I was constantly checking places like the Nelson-Atkins, the World War I Museum, any museum in the city, really, just because I knew I wanted a museum internship. I also relied pretty heavily on the help of my professors. They knew that I wanted to have an internship, but specifically a museum internship. So they kind of kept their ear to the ground for me and were connected with their colleagues who might not have an internship opportunity open at that moment, but maybe wanted one in a couple of months down the line, which is really helpful.
Right. And what year were you when you applied for the first internship at the World Museum of, what is it, the Museum of World? No, what is it?
Oh, so
Toy Museum. The Toy Museum.
The Toy
right?
Museum. It's the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures.
Okay.
I was, it was the summer of my junior year.
Okay.
So
you applied when you were a junior?
I applied when I was a junior. Yes.
Okay.
And that's a lie. I applied when I was a sophomore. The dates all run together, but I applied for the internship at the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures when I was a sophomore going into my junior year of college, so it was the summer between. And at that point, I didn't have a whole lot of experience, so I was really grateful to get the opportunity because it did really help build out my resume and my work experience.
Right. And what exactly did you do there at that museum?
Yeah,
to me, it's a toy museum.
It's a toy museum. Yeah, we called it the Toy and Mini Museum.
The Toy Mini Museum. That's
yeah.
It. Yeah.
I was an education intern, so I was on a small team of 3 total interns that was responsible for overseeing the summer education program. It was a program that was really geared towards families of all ages. A lot of our participants were school-age kids, but sometimes older teens and adults, even grandparents, would participate too. We met 3 times a week. The first session was a planning meeting where we planned what our activity was going to be for the public that visited later on. We also had a session each week where we talked about kind of hot issues in the museum world, which was really nice because we got to really learn about what's going on in museums, what are the hot button issues. And then the third meeting each week was our activity for the general public. So we hosted a hands-on activity that was usually art-based. We'd do either miniature pottery, or people would get to dress dolls up in clothing. They would decorate doll houses. And we would also offer tours of the collections as well to supplement what people were learning in the hands-on activity.
Nice. And how did you like that work, being at the Toys and Mini Museum?
It was a lot of fun. It's a unique museum. There's not a lot of toy museums or museums of fine-scale miniatures in the world.
Right.
And I learned there that I really liked interacting with kind of the public, people who didn't devote their entire world to working in museums or thinking about museum topics like, people in the field tend to do. So I really loved getting to do the tours and answer questions, and it was always fun to do a little hands-on art activity with little kids. So
nice.
Yeah,
that sounds like fun. And at the Nelson-Atkins, what exactly did you do there during your term?
Yeah.
I mean, the Toys and Mini Museum internship was just over the summer, right?
Yes, it was from May to August.
Okay, and it was paid or unpaid?
It was paid.
It was paid.
Yes.
And then the Nelson-Atkins Museum was, longer than the summer.
Yeah, at the Nelson-Atkins, I originally started just as a summer intern, but because I was attending university really just down the street at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and I had the time, I stayed on for the rest of the calendar year. So I started in May of one year, and I finished up in May of the next year. And really the only reason I ended then was because I graduated and I moved out of Kansas City.
Ah, got it. So in a way, you started thinking that it would be just for the summer, but then it ended up just being longer than you had expected. And what exactly did you do there at the Nelson-Atkins?
I was a curatorial intern, so I worked as an intern in the European Painting and Sculptures department, and my specific role was to work as a research assistant for a specific subset of the collection. So within the broad collection of all of the European art, there was a small portion that had been donated that was called the Star Collection of Portrait Miniatures. So portrait miniatures are these tiny little, usually oval portraits of someone's loved one, you know, a husband, a wife, a child. And the collection itself was really robust, and the curatorial department was looking to update its curatorial files about those objects. So a lot of what I did was doing primary research about the objects. When were they purchased? Where were they purchased? What do we know about the sitter? What can we find out about the artist, the materials? And I built up object files about each of these fine scale miniatures. So I did really like very real curatorial work.
That's really great. So while you were doing this internship, was there anything, I mean, either internship, either at the Toys and Mini Museum or the Nelson-Atkins, what was surprising to you?
That's a good question. I think what was surprising to me at the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures was how many hats you have to be prepared to wear when you work in a small museum. So this museum had a staff of, at the time, I think it was less than 20 total people. So people did obviously have specific jobs. There was, you know, the director of education, there was the head of, you know, the collections, there was obviously the director herself. But because there's not that many people in the space, you have to be willing to lend a hand with whatever needs to be done. So I learned really that in a small museum, you do a lot more different things than you do in a big museum like the Nelson-Atkins, where people tended to be a little bit more funneled in their own department and their own task.
Yeah, that makes sense. And did you like that, or was there something that you realized, yeah, maybe the museum world is not for me?
Yeah, I liked each of the internships when I was there. I loved the people I worked with, and the work I was doing was really interesting. But what I learned about myself is that I really like having contact with the public. So now I want to be an instructor. I love being in the classroom with students. And especially at a bigger museum like at the Nelson-Atkins, you tend to be around other art historians and other museum people, which obviously I'm around other art historians all the time now, but I really love having contact with students and having contact with people who have new questions about art and who are learning about it for the first time. So that's what I learned about myself, and it did help me find out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.